Welcome to BP Leadership Podcast, where real leaders are made. I'm your host, Bill Purvis, and today's episode is a continuation of our series in Back the Blue. We've got my special guest officers, Bill and Dawn Tooney, with us today, and we're going to continue our conversation along the line of the experience that Bill has that we haven't covered yet of being on the SWAT team. Some situations they've had there and what you learn from, what you have to do. Dawn's run-in with a man on drugs holding a huge blade. Their interactions with people that just don't have a conscience at all. There's a lot of things we're going to learn today about these fine law enforcement officers that all of us ought to appreciate and that we're going to learn to love today. So let's get started with this continuation of Back the Blue. Well, now, you've been with SWAT for a long time, too. How many years have you been there?
25.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are there situations, have you ever had any like that, like either a bank or a home or whatever like that? You say, those are situations I've had to go into, and what's that like when you get there?
That's I'm kind of an adrenaline junkie.
Uh-huh.
I love
yeah,
I love the excitement of it and everything. Yeah. You know, forming a plan. Going in, we've gone after homicide suspects, bank robbery suspects. Tactics have changed a lot since when we first got it. Before. It's like we show up, all right, kick the door and go in and get him.
Yeah.
You know, control chaos, you know, whatever. But it's changed now. But we've gone in on, trying to think of one, was doing a drug warrant, and that was the closest I ever come to, the layout of the house. I wasn't a team leader at the time. I was just a SWAT member and everything. And it took us forever to get in the house because old boy was trying to pull the door. But we get in the house, and the layout of the house was wrong compared to what we were told. And this guy did not like the police at all. He had, and everything. But I was told he had several guns, sawed-off shotguns, and all this kind of stuff. So we get in there, and I was doing what's called pinning a door, which means I'm covering the door while everybody's going past and everything. Well, old boy was standing at the top of the stairs, so, of course, I'm covering down on him, and I'm saying, let me see your hands, police. Every time we go in, police, search warrant, whatever, And so let me see your hands. Well, he raises his right hand up, but he's got his left hand back down behind his leg.
Right.
So I'm thinking, okay, he's got a weapon. And, he would not raise his hand. He wouldn't do it.
Right.
The whole time I'm thinking, if he depends on how he reacts, what I'm going to have to do.
Yeah.
Well, luckily it was a cell phone. He drops it because he was back had his hand behind his leg, and it was a cell phone.
Oh.
Now, if he'd have come up quick,
that's right.
But he dropped it and come up. That was because I already made in my mind if he comes up with a weapon, I'm going to do what I have to do, revert back to training.
I can get that.
But that's just one. There's a, right off the top of my head, I can't think of.
Oh, yeah.
So how often does a SWAT team kind of get called a year?
Ours, we're a part-time SWAT. Not as often as you'd think.
Right.
I mean, it's sometimes it depends on the weather, really, because
got called together 3 times.
Yeah, she's a hostage negotiator, so we get called out. We both go together. So there's times where we get called a lot, and then there's times where we don't. It might be 2 or 3 months before we get a call. Now we do a lot of homicide will come to us. Homicide detectives will come to us and say, look, we got this guy here. They got what's called, we do a threat assessment. And it's just numbers. You check the box, and it reaches a certain number, say, contact SWAT. And, we do that. But we do a lot of stuff with homicide. And the unit I'm in, the narcotics unit, we do a lot of stuff with them. They do a threat assessment. Now, these guys in special ops unit, they do a lot of training, too. So they do a lot of their own search warrants. But when it gets down to where they, they say, now I got guns, known gang members or whatever, and the number's too high, then they call us. So. But back to your question, it just depends. It ain't like we get called out, every week or something.
No.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it seems our call outs are Sunday nights, 2
in
the morning.
At 3 in the morning.
That's the worst of it. Now let me ask you: are drugs a big part of a lot of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And this area, what's the most prominent drug that's on the street out here?
Oh, goodness.
Cocaine, marijuana, but cocaine. And
we got a lot of heroin.
We got a lot of heroin. I was getting to that. When I first got in the drug unit back in 95, I think, never saw heroin. Mm-hmm. And from what I was talking with the old agents that were up there, and they said Fort Benning in Columbus used to be the hub for heroin back during Vietnam, because it came during the Vietnam War.
The base. Yeah.
You know, it came through like that. But the whole time I was in Metro or in the drug unit, never saw any heroin. Mm-hmm. And when I become a canine handler, I have to train my dog on real drugs.
Right.
Didn't have any real heroin, so I had to get some fake stuff.
Yeah. Go
somewhere else and buy some.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
But now heroin, and fentanyl. Fentanyl is
and meth.
Yeah, meth.
Yeah,
meth is.
Yeah, I've heard that makes. I heard about a couple that this guy said he went over to collect a bill or whatever, and he said the couple was on meth. Mm-hmm. They were a young couple. He said they were just crazy out of their heads.
It's a crying shame.
It seemed like at one point here in Columbus there was no meth, and then just a drop of a hat. It just overnight. It just like inundated with it. Meth labs, and those are wicked. Meth labs. Yeah, those are bad. It's because it's real volatile. Mm-hmm. It can blow up, catch on fire, and
And I would think that'd be the biggest thing, dealing with people that are under the influence of drugs like that. Mm-hmm. You know, they're not rational, and that can turn a situation bad very quick.
Yes,
and and I don't think they even think. From what I hear and know, it's like they don't even think about anything other than that you're about to bust me. So one of us has got to go. You know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there was the case when I was still in patrol, and it's been years, so it's I can talk about it. I won't give names.
Yeah.
We had an individual. He acted as like an informant for me when I was on in patrol. And he had a wife, and she dabbled in cocaine, and, well, he partook of it to himself. And during the daytime, we were hearing these weird calls saying there's a dude running around, and he thinks he's Batman. And he's got a switchblade. Or swing. What are those things called?
Sickle.
Like a sickle. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I was on evening shift that day, and then we got a call out that there was a man over at the old Swift Mills just going berserks, and he had a huge blade like a sickle, and he was threatening people, and he was trying to break into the fence. And I got the call, and I went up there, and lo and behold, it was the individual that I knew.
Right.
And I looked at him, I'm like, this isn't him.
Yeah.
I've known him this isn't him. Yeah. He's got to be on something. And he was, bless his heart. But me and my partner, we stood there and we tried to talk to him, and he had the sickle, but I mean, he never came toward us at that moment with the sickle. He was just acting strange. Well, at that time, he was in special ops, and he would like to listen to the radio to see what I was doing to make sure I was okay.
Yeah.
And he heard the call go out, and it was dispatched to me, so he moseyed on down over there to ensure I was okay. And he was out, and he was in the back of the shadows. You couldn't see him, and all of a sudden I'm talking to the guy, and he turns around and he looks at me, and he starts to come forward, and then he stops, and he puts his sickle down to light a cigarette. And before, lo and behold, Mr. Shadow, bam,
Bill was
came
there,
from behind and just tackled him to the ground.
Yeah.
And we took him to the hospital, and he looked up at me, and I guess he was coming off, and he recognized me, and he just cried, and he goes, I'm so glad that you were the one that got this call.
Wow.
He said, because anybody else probably would have shot me.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and that kind of touched me too, but that goes back to that discernment, you know?
That's right. And that's that thing, too, that I think a lot of people don't see. When you talk about police officers, y'all got into it to help people and to keep the streets safe and the city healthy and safe. And I think the worst thing, I think the most disrespected people oftentimes are law enforcement. People don't realize, they'll trash them, but then they're going to call them as soon as they got a problem. And I always say, why don't you be consistent? You know, either you want to call them now and don't call them later. You know? But I know that a lot of our listeners also are grateful, and especially being husband and wife team as well, like that you get to do it. That puts you, I guess, you can talk about the same things because it gives you common conversation at home.
Yeah.
We can understand each other.
Yeah.
And you touched on something, though, that is real dear to my heart. There's a lot of people out there that don't think well of police.
I know.
They gave me a ticket. They arrested my son, blah, blah, blah. And I understand, the irritation, but what they don't see is they don't see the police officer that has to go to the call where they find a suicide victim.
Right.
They don't see the police officer that's by themselves, that is shaking in their boots because they know what they have to do next.
Yep.
And the things that are around, they don't see all that.
That's
and if
right.
a police officer passes you in the car and you wave to them and they don't wave back, it's not because they're being ugly.
Right.
They've got 5,000 things
That's
on their
right.
mind. They're trying to keep straight and
That's
what's
right.
going to happen next.
Yeah, I get it.
So,
I get it. And the other, even on the little things like you say, well, they wrote my son a ticket or whatever. Those are things that probably helps you to save your life, maybe, but at least keeps you a better citizen.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
I used to say to my kids, I say, whatever you got at home, you get. Whatever you got at school, you got at home. You got commended, you get commended at home. You get a whipping at school, you get one at home.
Mm-hmm.
And if a policeman or a school teacher or whatever gets on to you, they're my friend. I'm grateful, because they were seeing you when I weren't there.
Yeah.
And I wish there would be much more respect.
Yeah.
I feel like as a nation, one of the ways that a nation goes awry is when they reject God.
Yes.
And then another is when they just do what they want. And then a final step or third step is when they just throw off all the all restraints from listening to their parents or authorities. And then that last stage, I think the last stage what's over, is when they have no regard for law enforcement.
For anything.
Yeah.
I think
or
when they
anything.
say we don't care what the law is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And part of that is if they don't get stopped early, their conscience gets worse. If you don't have some things and you can get away with everything in the world, your conscience don't bother you.
Mm-hmm.
And I know y'all have seen it because years ago I had a friend who her son was murdered, and she didn't know where to go, what to do, whatever. And I happen to know a guy who was in prison, been in prison all of his life.
Mm.
I love him, a nice guy, but he would, I was like his only friend at that time. And I remember I told him about that lady, and he said, he met with a district attorney. He said, tell you what, Bill, he said, down here in this network, everybody knows everything. He said, since that's her only son and she's lost him, he said, tell you what, if you can get me to meet the DA, and I know he was looking for time off his thing, I can get you some info here. And then when he sat down with me and the DA, I introduced him, and then I walked off and left them together. I remember that one of the things he said to the DA, he said, that guy, his conscience is gone. He said, killing that boy to him was as easy as you and I swatting a fly. He said, it did no more bother him. And I know y'all probably run into a lot of people that they just don't have a conscience.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
And when you meet those, can you see it right up front when you meet them and just realize and spot that person right there is just.
You do, and for the most part you can. Then that's when you kind of, the red flags are going up, the hair on the back of your neck standing up. You know, okay, you got to really be on your P's and Q's because you got to watch this guy. You don't, or female, male or female, doesn't matter the age either. But you got to watch him because he ain't caring about nothing.
Yeah.
So you got to, when things like that happen, always revert back to your training.
Yeah.
And do what you got to do to make sure you go home at the end of the day.
Now, are you able then, because of the street knowledge and experience and education, are you able to, when you're with somebody, immediately kind of assess they've done time or?
Oh yeah.
You do that automatically, and that just comes with the job.
Yeah. I would think y'all would be good at it. And the reason I say I have a little, not much. I remember a guy one time that came to church, and I found out, I said, how long have you been in? And he'd been in 30 years.
Wow.
He said, just got it. And he actually went back. And the reason is he couldn't function out here. He kind of broke his parole because he could not function.
That's a shame.
Yeah, it is. It was like, I knew that world and I can't live here. And he even told me before he went back, he said, I'm going to violate parole because I can't make decisions. I can't do all this stuff. And I knew that with him. And then another time, there was a guy working at my house doing something. And I don't know, I just slipped up. I walked up and met him, and then I said, when'd you get out? And he said, 2 weeks ago. and he did a great job.
You want a job? Columbus Police is hiring.
He was repairing my floors, and he just got that job. So we talked, and Debbie, my wife, says afterwards, I can't believe you said, when'd you get out? I said, I can't believe it either. After it came out, I said, did I say that? But that was only just 2 times in my life. But I know y'all see people, this person had done time. Yeah. They just are more hardened or more seasoned or.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you really got to, they'll play the word game with you. They'll try to mess with you. And first thing they're doing is they're sizing you up too.
Yeah. Are they?
Yeah, they're looking at it and say, okay, I'm going to see how far I can push them. Or that's why different officers, if you come up there acting timid, then they're going to say, okay, I can get over on this one.
Yeah.
But you come up there, you're hard but fair.
Right.
You let them know right off the top. You ain't going to push this one around. You ain't going to mess with me because, bad things will happen to you.
Yeah.
Well, let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll do what I need to do.
Yeah.
But that's why
they know who they can push.
Exactly.
And a lot of people see that and they automatically, that cop's got a chip on their shoulder. No, that's just.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's just.
You gotta. For
it.
years of doing this stuff, that's just.
Yeah.
Becomes part of you.
All right, well, I'm so glad that you stay tuned for part 2 of our conversation with Officers Bill and Don, tuning in our Back the Blue series here on the BP Leadership Podcast. And in part 3, you get to see a little bit more behind the scenes, and we get to pull the curtain back a little bit and see into their personal life, and not just being an officer, but also being a parent, and how their kids really didn't get away with much growing up because of their years in service and in training as a police officer. Some really good stuff that I really think you're going to enjoy. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're on, as well as hit the bell if you're watching on YouTube so that you can get notified as soon as part 3 airs of this podcast. Also, for those of you that do not know, each and every month, live right here in the Columbus, Georgia area, Bill Purvis shares a leadership luncheon with hundreds of leaders within our community. We have so much fun. We've done it for the last 3 years, and it has grown tremendously. So if you're ever in our area, or if you live in the area and you just don't know about it, come check us out. We have lunch. You get to hear a leadership lesson, have some really cool giveaways, and it's all jam-packed in an hour, so you can come on your lunch break and make it on back to work. So if you're interested in coming to one of our upcoming events, check us out on our website, bpleadership.com, and hit the events button. It's got all the dates and times of the upcoming lunches for you to check out. So make sure that you do that. Well, thank you guys again for joining us today. So glad you stayed tuned. Get ready for part 3. And remember that this is where real leaders are made.